Europe talks constantly about strategic autonomy. That means the ability to defend itself without depending entirely on the United States. But here is the uncomfortable reality. Europe still struggles to produce enough artillery shells for Ukraine. Major weapons programs face years of delays. Defense factories lack capacity, and many European armies still rely heavily on American equipment. At the exact moment Europe faces its biggest security crisis since the Cold War, its defense industry is under enormous strain. This should not be happening. The European Union has a combined economy larger than China's. European countries build advanced fighter jets, submarines, missiles, and tanks. Companies like Airbus, Rheinmetall, BAE Systems, Leonardo, and Dassault produce world-class technology. Yet Europe still cannot mobilize military production fast enough. Why? Because Europe spent decades building an economic union, not a war machine. Now, the Ukraine war exposed every weakness simultaneously. Fragmented industries, slow procurement systems, energy shocks, labor shortages, political disagreements, dependence on American weapons and Chinese materials. And Europe suddenly realized something alarming. Economic power does not automatically create military readiness. That realization could reshape European politics, NATO, and the global arms industry for decades. To understand Europe's defense industry crisis, you need to understand what happened after the Cold War. When the Soviet Union collapsed, most European governments believed major war in Europe had become unlikely. Defense budgets shrank sharply, factories closed, production lines slowed or disappeared entirely. Europe shifted priorities. Governments focused on welfare spending, economic integration, and globalization instead of military expansion. NATO still existed, but Europe relied heavily on American military protection. Then came Russia's invasion of Ukraine. The war shocked Europe strategically and psychologically. Suddenly, large-scale industrial warfare returned to the continent. Ukraine began consuming enormous quantities of artillery, missiles, drones, and ammunition daily. Europe discovered it lacked the industrial depth for this type of conflict. Modern European defense industries were optimized for small, expensive, high-tech systems. They were not built for mass wartime production. And rebuilding that capacity takes years. Factories need workers, raw materials, financing, supply chains, and long-term contracts. None of this changes overnight. That leads to the first major reason Europe's defense industry is struggling. Europe does not operate one unified defense industry. It operates dozens of competing national industries. France wants French systems. Germany supports German manufacturers. Italy backs Italian firms. Poland buys heavily from South Korea and the United States. This creates duplication everywhere. Europe operates multiple tank platforms, fighter programs, naval systems, and artillery designs simultaneously. The United States standardizes far more efficiently. The result is higher costs and slower production. Take fighter jets. Europe produces the Rafale, Eurofighter Typhoon, Gripen, and now competing sixth-generation projects. Each country protects domestic jobs and national prestige instead of consolidating programs. That hurts scale. American firms often produce larger quantities cheaper because they serve a more unified market. Europe splits demand across many national champions. Politics worsens the problem. Joint European defense projects frequently face delays because governments disagree over funding, technology sharing, and industrial control. Countries want local jobs and production guarantees before approving deals. This slows everything down. And during wartime urgency, slow systems become dangerous. But fragmentation alone does not explain the crisis. The second problem is even deeper. Europe lost industrial wartime mentality. For decades, European economies optimized for efficiency, not resilience. Companies minimized inventory. Governments prioritized environmental regulations and fiscal discipline. Heavy industry declined in many regions. That model worked during peace. It struggles during prolonged conflict. The Ukraine war exposed severe shortages quickly. Europe lacked ammunition stockpiles. Production lines operated too slowly. Supply chains depended heavily on foreign components. Energy prices made things worse. After reducing Russian energy imports, European manufacturers faced rising electricity and gas costs. Defense production became more expensive precisely when governments needed rapid expansion. Labor shortages also emerged. Advanced defense manufacturing requires skilled engineers, welders, machinists, and technicians. Europe's aging population and shrinking industrial workforce created bottlenecks. Meanwhile, some critical raw materials come from outside Europe entirely. Rare earth elements matter for missiles, electronics, and advanced military systems. China dominates many of these supply chains globally. Europe now faces the uncomfortable reality that strategic industries depend partly on geopolitical rivals. And rebuilding industrial ecosystems takes time. Factories cannot appear instantly because politicians announce new budgets. Defense production requires years of planning, infrastructure, and workforce development. That delay creates growing anxiety inside Europe, especially because of the third major issue: dependence on the United States. Europe talks increasingly about strategic independence. But in practice, many European militaries still depend heavily on American capabilities. The United States provides intelligence, logistics, missile defense, transport aircraft, satellites, and nuclear deterrence for much of NATO. Even weapons procurement reflects this dependence. Countries across Europe increasingly buy American systems like the F-35 fighter jet, Patriot missile defense batteries, and HIMARS rocket systems. Why? Because American systems often arrive faster and integrate more smoothly into NATO operations. But this creates a political contradiction. European leaders want stronger domestic defense industries. Yet governments often purchase American equipment during crises because U.S. companies can deliver quickly. That weakens European manufacturers further. At the same time, uncertainty about future American commitment worries Europe deeply. Donald Trump repeatedly criticized NATO burden sharing. Many Europeans fear future U.S. administrations may focus more heavily on Asia and less on European security. That fear accelerated calls for European strategic autonomy. But autonomy requires industrial power. And industrial power cannot emerge overnight after decades of underinvestment. Europe now races against time. The implications are massive. First, Europe may dramatically increase defense spending for years ahead. Germany alone launched a historic rearmament push after the Ukraine invasion. Second, the global arms market could shift significantly. European governments increasingly prioritize domestic production and supply chain security. That could create a new wave of military-industrial investment across the continent. Third, NATO itself may evolve. If Europe strengthens industrial capacity successfully, it could reduce dependence on Washington gradually. If it fails, reliance on American military power may deepen further. And finally, Europe's struggle sends a broader message globally. Modern wars depend not only on advanced technology, but also industrial endurance. Countries need factories, workers, logistics, and supply chains capable of sustaining prolonged conflict. Ukraine proved this brutally. Military strength no longer means only having sophisticated weapons. It means producing enough weapons continuously under pressure. That changes how governments think about national power entirely.